So some people don't spray it. I mean, some scapers don't scape it. I don't spray it, but I like to spray it back so it's actually clumped down easier when I'm planting. Some scapers don't scape it, don't spray it at all. Some scapers like to fill it to halfway so it actually the plant stays in the soil better.
When they add the water.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I mean, if you spray it first, most of the time the soil will stay sinking. Sometimes people have used like Aquasoil will experience like soil floating up once they fill it, and if you spray it first, it just minimises the chances of that.
So what plants are we thinking for this scape?
So, like I said, we're trying to do something simple and easy.
Yep.
So I'm thinking of something, an easy carpeting plant, and maybe one or two type of like background plants, and some epiphytes on the driftwood.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool. Let's go have a look at that. All right. So we have a little bit of a selection over here.
Yep.
So what are we pulling apart here?
So this is mini Java fern. Actually, it's like a dwarf version of normal Java fern. All the plants I choose here will grow without CO2. This is your infamous like Monte Carlo.
Yep.
This is Monte Carlo, and then you got like Cypress Hellfire, Cypress Hellfairy.
There we go.
Which is
better light. Yep.
a background plant that we're going to use,
Cool.
and the mini Java fern.
All right, so nice and simple. We've got our carpeting plant, background plant, and then this. I'm assuming you're going to
Put them on the driftwood.
That's what I was thinking.
So we might use some moss as well, but let's try to put these on and see what the effect is first.
Yep,
and then
perfect.
if it's still too empty, we'll put some moss on.
Alrighty. So what we'll do is we will sort of position some of them out. We'll figure out where we like the location of them, and then we'll start planting.
What do you think?
It looks really good. So now these plants, they don't need to be in the soil to grow.
Yeah, they don't need to be in the soil. These are ferns. You can. They have a rhizome. If you put them in soil, they will kind of rot a little bit. So they don't do really well on soil. And normally we just like tie them on driftwoods or rocks and glue them as well.
Oh, they look really good.
Cool. So just got your plants. Normally, for these like grassy looking ones, like a bunch of looking ones, if you can gently pour it off. Yeah, it's close to clean already, but I'll still clean it. Put it in like a bowl of clean water. You don't want that to get into your sink as well. And you just gently press on the roots, on the gel, crush them up.
Perfect.
Yep.
Now, what happens if you miss some?
It should be alright, but that's really Aussie to say, right? Because it's actually a lot of nutrients and other stuff, you don't want that to get in your tank. It just sometimes causes like algae bloom.
Okay.
Yep. A lot of people like find it really hard to clean like the Monte Carlo types or like the carpeting plant types.
Yeah.
They're afraid of actually crushing it or damaging it, but I'll say it's actually really hard to damage it unless you like step on it. So normally I just like tap it out. You see it's just literally full of gel and the roots are on top. Normally what I do is I just dip it in water and press. You see like all the gel just like slowly just turns into mush and just slowly get washed away by the water.
Well, there you go. I did do it correctly.
Yeah.
Now, the thing with the Monte Carlo, though, is Now, do you break it up and plant multiple clumps all across the substrate, or do you just plant one big lot and let it grow?
You can actually do both. I mean, if you want a really well finished looking tank, and on day one you can pretty much like buy like 15 tubs and then you put it in a clump, and it looks done in the first day. But normally what I do, because I'm a cheap ass, you have to beat that. I just like put them in the tiny clumps, and I plant it in individually. Normally in a pattern of like a 4 on a dice or a 5 on a dice. Yeah.
4 on a dice or 5 on a dice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Didn't know that one. Makes sense.
Cool. So normally for something like this, depends how you want to split them into. I'll split them into like tiny bunches like these.
Yep.
So you can plant them in there nicely. Cool.
That's the one that I find is a bit trickier, is getting the gel off your more carpeting plants, because they are so intertwined.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes like what I just did, like even here you can see there's some gel.
Yep.
What you need to do is just like press it even more.
Yep.
Just gently tap it, and then even if like it's loose now, you just like put it back in a clump like that. Yeah. So when we're doing the planting, as I said, we have like at least roughly around 3 centimeters thick of soil.
Yep.
And the soil is actually really damp. Then we can start planting. So normally I just use a tweezer and I hold the bottom like that, and you just plant it in. You can plant it really deep. You don't want to plant it too shallow, because when you put water in, it will just float up. And the second thing is, like, it's always handy to have a spray bottle to spray the plant, because it's really easy for like aquatic plants to dry.
Yeah.
Once they're dry, they're dead. So even for Monte Carlo, you can even plant it deeper. So it only like shows a tiny bit of like foliage. It will still come back. So if you plant too shallow, like sometimes I see my customers do, they plant it like this. They only put the roots in, hoping will float up. Pretty much you have to keep replanting that back down. So don't worry about planting it too deep, or even like shoving it to like you can only see a tiny bit of grass. It will still come back. It will still grow.
Okay.
Just make sure it's anchored down.
So if I was doing a dry scape, for instance, and I was putting the Monte Carlo in,
Yep.
it's not going to matter so much if it's up high, because it should start
Correct.
putting its roots out, and by the time you add water, it's not less likely to float off then.
Yeah, correct. Because mainly the dry start method was created back in the days when people are trying to grow HC Cuba, which is a much pain in an arse, like beat them again, plant to grow. And they actually are really slow growing on the roots. From memory, they are a floating plant in the wild, so they just tend to grow less roots and float. So dry start is actually for them to establish their roots first to cover the tank, and when you flood it, they will actually stay intact.
Yeah.
But if you're doing like a dry start, you can literally just like a whole piece, dump it on, and let it grow roots.
Look how good it looks.
But if you plan to flood it in a really near filter, without letting it to grow roots, you have to plant it deep. If not, it's just going to float up.
No, fair enough.
Cool.
So this one, what was this one called again?
This is Cypress Halfry, Cypress Halferi. So these comes in like multiple bunches, like here. So normally I'll just like gently wiggle and split it into like multiple plants. I mean, you can split it smaller, but it doesn't look as bushy.
Yeah.
But if you don't split it, it's just too. There's too much plantness in one plant. It will just compete with each other, and most of the time you have like a few die off, and only one will come back alive. So do split it when you get like tissue culture plants.
Okay.
So for these plants, some people find, or sometimes even me, I do find it harder to plant because it doesn't have much texture or stuff to hold it when it's in the soil. So even you plant it deep, you flood it, it still floats up.
Okay.
So this one, normally I just plant it really, really deep. So like that, plant it real deep. Sometimes it still floats up because it's just straight. There's no other leaves to hold it or anchor it down the soil.
Yep.
But like I said, don't worry, it will come back. It will grow tall and strong. So when you're planting, especially for like these like tall plants, I love to like give it a couple centimeters like space. So when they grow, they actually have space to grow, and they can open their leaves. They don't look as like clamped or like crowded. So actually gives them a bit more space to grow. Show distancing, yeah. So this small tip of like choosing background plants and like mid-ground plants is like make sure they don't grow super long in the tank. Depends on your tank size. If not, they will just only cover your block out the lights.
Yeah.
And they will literally just like at the end you will want to pull them out and just like change it because all your front carpeting plants are not growing properly. All your other plants are just not healthy at all because there's not enough light.
That's perfect. We will continue to plant these, and we'll come back in a couple of days actually, and we'll sort of have it all set up and finalise the location of all the plants, and we'll share that with you in... So here we are a couple of days later. You've added some extra plants, or are they the same over here? That's the Monte Carlo still?
Yep, it's still Monte Carlo.
And you spread it out all the way across.
Yep.
Right, so we've gone with 3 different types of plants still. So it's sort of, is that a bit of a ruling? Sometimes keep it nice and simple, don't overdo it.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, because like most hobbyists, when we look at like plants, we're like, oh, cool, I want to try this, I want to try that one. But at the same time, you want to make sure you follow through your theme and your so-called aquascape design. You don't want to like crowd it, or you don't want to like put too much plants in it, so it just takes away the main theme, and then you add really funky, weird texture into your tank.
Yeah.
Because you have to imagine it. Okay, after a month or two, it's going to look like this. With multiple plants most of the time, you get like a really weird, really funny texture.
Yeah, fair enough. That makes heaps of sense. I think that's what I find amazing. Like a heavily planted aquarium, I think looks really good, but sometimes, yes, it can look messy. And I always do when I watch a lot of aquascapers on YouTube. They'll go, oh, I've let this aquarium go, look at the mess it is. And I look at it and go, but it looks amazing still. And then they'll trim it all up and clean it all out. And then, yes, it will look better. But I know, yes, I feel like simplicity helps when you've got one main focus. Alright, so we are about to fill the tank, but we've run out of time today, so you will have to check that out next week. We will stock the tank, we're going to fill it up with water, and we'll start looking at how this tank's going to progress over time and what's going to be required to make this tank an absolute success. Thank you very much for watching, everybody. Remember, if you aren't subscribed, hit that button. We'll be back next week with another edition of Aquascaping with Boaz. And he just fell over in the background. See ya.
What a wonderful world.